Well, welcome to class. It's DBA710, Management and Leadership Approaches, and no, that's not me wearing shades. That's a younger version of Tom Cruise. But we are moving on in our quest to understand more about management theories. And this week we're going to be looking at what are called the contingency, or sometimes called situational theories of management and leadership. Now, the focus, as you know, in this class is more on the management aspect of things, but there's also contingency theories in leadership, and there's some degree of overlap, although the literature that I've included here is mainly from the perspective of contingency management theories. So we have a set of assigned readings. I think there's actually 7 articles for you to deal with that kind of introduce the subject and provide some of the main thinkers in this particular area. And I guess one thing I want to mention about the idea that certain people seem to focus on certain areas. So you would see in the systems theories, you would see a certain group of people who seem to focus on that. And if you looked at the human relations theory, you see certain people who focus on that. And again, in the contingency theories, there's people who focus on this particular aspect of management. And it's important as you kind of move forward into your concentrations to begin to understand, so in these different areas, who is a main thinker in this particular area, and what research is coming out of that particular school of thinking about this subject. We saw that in DBA760, where there was the Mintzberg School of Strategic Management, and there was the Porter School of Strategic Management, and each of those provide kind of a basis of ongoing theory and research in that particular area. Obviously some overlap, but they definitely have their own perspective, and the same is true with the literature here. The assignment for the week will just be the discussion posts, and as expected, we'll be talking about how these theories, this new set of theories, have contributed to the overall field of management and leadership as we've kind of moved forward from the early late 1800s and early 1900s up into more current times. The contingency theories have become another popular way of looking at how management should operate, establishing a set of principles and approaches that can be taken. And again, this will match up with some of the things that I've already heard in the discussions, because it tends to say how you manage is going to depend upon the particular situation that you're in, whether this is a situation with regards to who you're managing, what the objectives are, what the environment is, that there are going to be different ways that are going to be more effective. And contingency theory tries to lay out what are the different dimensions that need to be addressed or analyzed before you decide the best approach to managing. So it should be a good week of discussion. And I would like to continue with the talk about the dissertation. Last week I introduced the overall dissertation process. Remember, it should look something like this. And these are the different stages that a student goes through when they begin working on their dissertation and continue on through the different phases. Well, today I'd like to go into more depth on the streams of literature and how you go from all this literature that's available about a particular topic, how you get it down to a specific area that you can actually work with. And again, this is important because before you can come up with a research topic, you have to be working from literature that you're familiar with. Okay? But how do you go from something as broad as all management literature or all leadership literature down to something that's actually researchable? Okay? So that's what this little mini lecture is going to be about. First of all, we need to address the issue of bodies of literature versus streams of literature. Bodies of literature in the social sciences and in other fields also, but business is considered part of social science, and one of the aspects, of course, is it deals with human beings, which means there's lots of different dimensions that can be included. But bodies of literature will generally develop around a well-founded theory that's accepted. For example, Porter's 5 forces theory, or Bass's transformational leadership theory, Friedman's efficient markets theory in economics. And as it is established and accepted and becomes a basis for additional work, it'll start to attract a lot of writing about it. Peer-reviewed journal articles will start appearing not only in economics journals, but they'll start appearing in other journals also, and authors from different fields will start to write about that. So once they're around for a while and they continue to gain momentum, they kind of snowball, then they're going to have a school of thought that kind of evolves around those. And it may end up being composed of millions of related published articles. I think I showed in one of the classes how you can go to Google Scholar, and if you Google something like management theory, you'll end up with 5 million pieces of evidence that you could look at. But as you kind of start to narrow it down, it gets smaller and smaller, the amount of articles that are actually available. So bodies of literature are just too huge. You can't possibly expect in your lifetime to read and condense and synthesize millions of articles. It just doesn't work that way. And so what we're looking for is the ability to select out a particular group of research called a stream and develop that stream based upon some foundational theory, whether it might be systems theory, whether it might be contingency theory. So you start out with a foundational theory, but then you take a particular aspect of that theory that you're interested in actually working on that's related to your research interest, and then only select the literature that's related to that particular topic. Of course, you need to show that you're aware of the broader field, the body of literature, but from that you start to focus entirely upon the thing that you're interested in and the literature that relates specifically to that. So by the time you're finished and you get down to the very essence of what you want to work with, you have a very specific definition of terms. All the literature that you're using agrees with those terms, agrees with the validity of the data that's there, and generally you're presenting a slice of this body of literature that is precisely focused in an agreement on a particular aspect. That aspect is what you want to work with. Okay? And this leads to the research gap or the research topic. Okay? That's kind of a logical, the next step is, okay, I've focused on this, I have all the literature that says this is a good area to research, and now I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Okay, so because this is the field we're working in with this particular class, let's just look at the evolution and the development of a body of literature, say in management. So we started out and we looked at Taylor and Fayol and Weber and Follett, and we're moving into the human relations area with Mayo, and then Maslow introduced the idea of the needs and motivations, and then we moved into the systems theories with Miller and Boulding. Herb Simon came in there, and now as we move into the contingency theories, we'll see that Lawrence and Lorsch are key contributors. And so you can see that this kind of builds as the Mississippi River builds and collects more literature around this particular topic. It gets to be a huge, it starts out small, but it gets to be, by end up dumping into the Gulf of Mexico, turns into a huge body of literature. And even off this main river of literature, if you want to call it that, we have tributaries that form into it. So if you just want to look at the Maslow, the motivational side, and look at the literature that developed from his work, the Aldorfer ERG theory, which is very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Max Neef was a contributor, Hertzberg with the hygiene and the motivators factors, Murray's systems of needs, Juan Antonio Lopez, and then there's McGregor's theory X and theory Y. So you can see that it just continues to build, and my point is that it's important to select what you want to work with and to narrow that down. Another way, which may again be pictorially more accurate, is to think of literature as kind of being a tree. So if we're talking about contingency theory as we are this week, well, the contingency theory didn't just sprout out of nowhere. The contingency theory was based upon the roots of classical management theories and systems theories, human relations theories. And as the contingency theories developed and were accepted and became a body of literature on their own, they again formed the basis for things like the SWOT analysis, studies and research in organizational culture and its effect on management. Leadership theories kind of evolved out of this particular body of literature, game theory and strategy, global management theories, stakeholder theories. Okay, so the contingency theories became important in the late 1950s and during the 1960s, and subsequent to that, these additional theories were built upon top of that. And if they became accepted, such as SWOT analysis obviously did, and stakeholder theory obviously did, then they began to develop their own body of literature. So in the example of stakeholder theory, this was generally attributed to R. Edward Freeman, who kind of wrote it up first, and then Charles Blackburg kind of opposed him and said this theory isn't really that relevant, or it's too broad, doesn't cover enough. But we've all heard of stakeholder theory, and then there's a bunch of people who've chosen their particular area to focus on and work within these particular areas, and they kind of become the leaves on this tree of literature. Okay, so you can see it's easy for a huge body of literature to evolve, especially in these days where there's lots and thousands of journals available to try to publish in. There's a pressure on all the university faculties to publish, and so consequently there's lots of research out there, and because of electronic databases through the libraries, it's very easy to select a lot of information. It's easy to get information. It's more difficult to figure out what to do with it. So how do you develop from this huge body of literature? How do you develop a stream of literature? Well, of course, you got to begin with a general understanding of what makes up the field. What is the literature? What are the various theories that are important? Who are the major figures that have contributed to the area? And then as you start thinking about a research topic, you think, well, what do I need from this body of literature to develop my stream of literature? How does it lead to the gap that I want to address? So first of all, you need to determine where you want to start, what's considered the foundational literature for your particular topic that you want to deal with. How much related literature? As I said earlier, in the social sciences area, you may, for example, in management, you may have people writing from the leadership perspective. You may have people writing from the strategy perspective. You may have people writing from the psychology perspective, the sociology perspective, from the political perspective. So you may have lots of different related literature to kind of choose from. So you've got to, again, determine what you think is relevant to your particular topic. Then you have to determine how narrow you're going to go. How far are you going to focus on? And this kind of comes from the more recent research. As you start to look at what's been published within the past, say, 4 or 5 years, you won't find people talking about the general nature of, for example, general systems theory. You'll be finding applications to specific areas like, the relationship between general systems theory and total quality management. So it gets more narrowly focused. So you got to start looking at what the latest research is. And because the whole point of doing the stream of literature is to bring you to a point where you're justifying your own research, you've got to determine what's the rationale for why am I including things in this particular stream? Why am I reviewing these articles? How does it contribute to my rationale for doing my research? And then you have to tie it all together. What's the theme that connects all the literature together? Okay, so that's kind of the overall objective of what you need to do. It may be easier if we kind of look at this from a specific graphic. So let's use leadership as an example. And if you go into the leadership field, you'll start to see that there's all kinds of leadership theories. There's dozens, if not hundreds, of leadership theories. Starting with the great man, there's trait theories, there's behavioral theories, there's contingency theories, transactional theories, transformational theories, servant theories, and many, many more. So you start out with a whole bunch of different theories that you could choose from. And let's just say for our particular example here, we've decided we want to work with something called competency theories. Okay, so we've selected from this big broad area of all these different theories to work from, to deal with competency theory. So now we need to determine how far back we're going to go. Where are we going to start? And if you trace the history of competency theory, you see that it evolved from trait theory and behavioral theories, and it was kind of amalgamized with Stockdale, White, McClelland, and others during the late 1950s, early 1960s. And this kind of developed the idea of competencies as being distinct from traits and behaviors. Now you've got to determine how much related literature is required, because as I said, you'll find people writing from the perspective of psychology. You'll find people writing from the perspective of sociology, anthropology, all kinds of areas. So now you start looking at the more modern literature, Silzer and Thornton, McClellan's still writing, and Bray, and you see what they're writing about with regards to leadership competencies and how they're utilizing them. Okay, so here we're up to step 4. Step 5 is to determine how narrowly the stream needs to be focused. Okay, so now we got to start thinking, well, exactly what's my topic going to be, because then I'll know what literature I'm going to need to support that topic. So, for example, suppose you decided you want to look at the relationship between competency theory and leadership style theory, specifically transactional style and transformational style. And number 6, you got to determine why the literature is being included. What's the rationale? So here we're going to only use literature that's related to, once we've established the foundational literature, we're only going to use literature that's related to competency's effect on the leader's ability to execute a particular style. Okay, so that when we go to the library and we start searching for things and reading things, that's going to be the magnet that we're going to use to test whether we want it or not. Is it included in this idea? And then finally, number 7, the literature's got to be tied together. You have to have the theme that's going to connect it together. How does one article relate to another? Why are you talking about what this person says? And I, again, encourage people to come up with their thesis statement, even for their stream of literature. What is this stream supposed to show? The stream will show that leadership competencies theory provides a proven model for determining specific demonstrated attributes of leaders. Okay, so that's saying what this stream is supposed to do. And then you're going to build the flow from the earlier literature to the current literature, and that'll provide one of the pieces that you need to develop your research gap, which will eventually end up being your topic. Okay, and here the question is going to be somewhere it'll be more specific than this, but is there a relationship between leadership competencies theory and leadership styles of transactional and transformational leadership? Okay, so some variation of that will be your general research topic, and out of that you'll develop some hypotheses, testable hypotheses. So that's the process. Again, where do dissertation topics come from? Because some people ask me, so where should I think of getting a topic? Well, think of getting your topic out of the literature. And we don't go to the coffee shop and decide to write a dissertation on latte sizes, and we don't watch Baywatch and decide you're going to write a dissertation on Baywatch, even if you are in the Department of Marine Biology. So dissertation topics come out of the literature. Okay, and we'll hear this again and again. And so there's really not much point in thinking about what topic you want to work on until you learn what the theories are that you have. What's your selection of theories? What can you choose? It's like going to a restaurant and saying, well, I've already decided I want this. And then you go to the restaurant and you say, yeah, but they don't serve that. That's, this is a sushi place. You're not going to get a hamburger here. Okay, so the keys to success. When you're working with the theories and writing up your weekly analysis and in your discussions and in your papers, you're kind of looking for comparisons. You're trying to find something that you can use to compare and look for similarities and differences within the theories. All these researchers are studying somewhat the same topic, and so there's got to be some underlying DNA or connection, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the things that link them together and the things that keep them separate. Many times there'll be divergent viewpoints in the literature, and you'll need to evaluate, who's the majority viewpoint. Over time, minority viewpoints will kind of fade away. Sometimes they'll establish their own body of literature, but all this takes time. That's why the dissertation and the getting your doctorate doesn't happen overnight, and the dissertation process can drag on for a while. And it's a good idea to get started early in thinking about developing the skills to read the literature, to be able to synthesize things and come up with good topics for your paper and develop a good style of writing. And as you're learning to do, all the information from previous classes, from the previous weeks in the classes, all those things should provide raw ingredients for what you write and what you put into your discussions. Okay? And because we're passing the halfway point of the class, I think it's time to shake it up. So, until next time, goodbye and good luck.